If you're in this next chapter, kids finally grown, a little more time than you know what to do with, maybe dreaming about traveling on your own someday, I'm guessing the one question sitting underneath all of it isn't, where would I even go? It's, isn't that dangerous doing it alone? That's a question I get asked often, usually right after someone finds out I do this by myself. And I get why. The picture in most people's heads is pretty stark. A woman alone, somewhere unfamiliar in the dark. But here's the real answer, and it's not the simple yes or no most people are hoping for. Safety isn't really about luck. It's about a handful of decisions I make before I ever leave, and a handful more I make every single day I'm out there. Decisions most people never see. So today I'm giving you the full picture, start to finish. This isn't really a van life video, it just happens to be me telling you what I've learned about traveling alone as a woman. And the van is where I learned it, systems and all, plus a scary moment where it got tested. Hey, I'm Steph. I traded a house for a van, learned to travel solo with confidence, and I'm figuring out what it looks like to simplify, focus on wellness, and stay rooted in faith in this next chapter. Today, I want to answer the question, is it actually safe to travel alone as a woman? And what does that safety really look like from before you ever walk out the door to the moment you settle in for the night, wherever that is? Here's what I've noticed after being asked this a bunch of different ways. People usually aren't asking for statistics. What they're really asking is, aren't you scared? And that's a fair question, but I think it comes from a slightly wrong assumption that safety is something that either happens to you or doesn't, like it's outside of your control. That's not how I experience it. Safety for me isn't a feeling I get lucky enough to have. It's a series of small, boring decisions I make over and over. Where I stay, who knows where I am, what I pay attention to. None of it's dramatic. Most of it you'd never even notice if you weren't watching me do it. So instead of just telling you, yes, it's safe, or no, it's not, I want to actually show you what I do, all of it, so you can judge for yourself. I'll say this, I think part of why this question comes up so much is that most of us were raised to believe a woman alone is inherently more vulnerable than a woman with someone else around. And there's some truth in that. But I don't think the answer is to stay home. I think the answer is to actually get good at things that make you less vulnerable wherever you are, in a van, a hotel room, or an airport, or your own car. I'm not always on the move. Much of the time, I park my tiny home on a horse ranch with other RVers up in the mountains, where I know my neighbors and it genuinely feels like home. Then, when I'm out traveling, the setting changes every night or two, but the habits underneath it don't. That's really the whole point of this video. Here's something I think is really important. Most of my safety systems happen before I ever walk out the door or turn the key. If something ever did go wrong, the odds are good I'd be caught by something I set up days earlier, not something I do in the moment. So let me actually walk you through what that looks like in real life. This is everything that's on my solo travel safety checklist. It's become so automatic for me after enough trips that I don't even think about it anymore, but I put it all in writing so you don't have to learn it the hard way. It's the same handful of things, whether I'm headed out in the van, a car, or through airport security. First, I tell someone where I'm actually going, not heading to Florida, specific stops, specific dates, and I set up a check-in schedule with that person. And they know exactly what to do and who to call if I miss one. Second, I make copies, photo and paper, of my ID, my insurance, my registration, and any reservations. It sounds like overkill until the one time you need it and don't have it. Third, I actually research where I'm headed before I get there. Which areas are considered safe, which areas to avoid, and just the general feel of where I'm planning to stay. I also note the nearest hospital or urgent care along my route just in case. Fourth, my phone's location is shared with someone I trust the entire time I'm traveling. I also save offline maps for my whole route because signal disappears exactly when you need it most. And I make sure a portable charger is packed somewhere I can reach it without having to dig through everything to find it. None of this is complicated. It's genuinely closer to packing a toothbrush than it is to some elaborate security plan. But it's the layer underneath everything else I'm about to show you. And it's the part almost nobody asks me about because it isn't as interesting as what do you do if someone knocks on your door? But it's just as important, maybe more. If you're finding this useful, hit subscribe. Up next, what actually keeps me safe once I've landed somewhere and the one night that put every bit of that to the test. Once I've actually arrived somewhere, whatever that somewhere looks like that week, a different set of habits takes over, and they're less about a specific place and more about how I show up in it. Most nights for me, that place is the van. So here's what that actually looks like. I stay at a lot of harvest hosts, wineries, churches, farms, private properties that let RVers spend the night. And when I'm at one of those, I genuinely don't worry much at all because it's real people who've opened up their property, not some anonymous pull-off. When I do stay at a regular campground, I take more precautions. I'll set out 2 chairs instead of 1, an old trick that just quietly signals I'm not necessarily alone. I don't announce that I'm traveling solo, and I pay attention to the people around me. But swap the van for a hotel room and the same instincts apply. I'll usually ask for a room above the ground floor, but not so high it's a problem if I ever needed the stairs. I ask for a room near the elevator instead of at the end of a long, empty hallway. And I use the deadbolt and chain every single time, even if it seems unnecessary. Whatever the setting, 3 things stay constant. 1, I think through how exposed a place is once it's dark, before I settle in. A parking spot or a hotel floor, same question. 2, doors locked and keys or a key card within reach, always. And 3, the big one, if I feel uncomfortable anywhere, I leave. In a van, that means turning the key and driving away. No explanation owed, no lease to negotiate. In a hotel, it means asking for a different room or checking out and eating the cost. Either way, I don't wait it out just to avoid feeling dramatic. I also keep my routine boring on purpose wherever I am. I'm not out wandering unfamiliar areas after dark just to see what's there. I run my errands, get where I'm going before it's late, and save the exploring for daylight. If I'm somewhere longer than a night or 2, I'll vary my routine on purpose, different times and different paths instead of being predictable. The habit that travels with me everywhere, no matter the setting, I don't share my location in real time. Not my parking spot, not my hotel, not a Facebook photo with my exact location. It's tempting, especially filming this for YouTube, but information doesn't do me any favors. It just tells anyone watching exactly where to find me. So the story gets told after I've left, or the details are omitted. Flying or taking an Uber adds one more layer. Someone still has my flight number, my hotel, my plan for the day, the same way someone always has my route when I'm traveling. And getting into a car with a stranger, which is really what a rideshare is, gets one extra step from me. I check the license plate and the driver's photo against the app before I get in, and I wait for them to say my name. None of this is about living scared in a van or anywhere else. It's just infrastructure. The same way you'd lock your front door at a house without thinking twice about it. The front door just keeps changing shape. There's one more layer to this, and it's the most important one because it looks like pure instinct from the outside, but it's not really. It's a set of small habits, same as everything else, and they travel with me no matter where I am. When I walk into somewhere new, a gas station, a lobby, a trailhead, a restaurant, I take a few seconds to actually look around before I look down at my phone. I keep at least one ear free of headphones in unfamiliar areas so I can actually hear what's happening around me. And I notice where the exits are, almost without thinking about it now. It's become automatic. I also pay attention to how other people are reacting to their surroundings, not just how I feel about them in the moment. If everyone around me seems relaxed and normal, that tells me something. If something feels off to other people too, that tells me something different. And here's the one I think matters most. I trust a gut feeling over good manners. I don't owe anyone an explanation for walking away from a conversation, a room, or a situation that doesn't sit right. Not a stranger, not a host, not even my own sense that I'm probably overreacting. I also carry a personal safety tool. And I want to be specific about that because owning one and actually knowing how to use it are two very different things. Mine came out of real hands-on training, not just a purchase. And I keep a plan for the first 60 seconds if something ever feels wrong. Not just leave, but where I'd actually go. Having that answered ahead of time means I'm not trying to think clearly for the first time in a moment when I'm not thinking clearly at all. Let me tell you about one night that actually put all of this to the test. I'd pulled into a Harvest Host at a brewery, a business that lets RVers park overnight. Usually dead quiet once they close for the night. I'd stayed at plenty of them without a second thought. Pull in, make dinner, go to sleep. That was the routine. This one started out exactly the same until someone knocked on my door. I didn't answer. I sat completely still, listening, running through everything I actually knew about where I was and who could possibly be knocking at that hour. Maybe it was nothing. Brewery staff doing a final walkthrough, someone lost, someone harmless. But I didn't owe anyone an explanation, and I didn't owe anyone an answer either. Whoever it was walked off, and I finished making dinner. I told myself that was that. A while later, I noticed people hanging out in cars around the lot, not doing anything in particular, just sitting there, longer than felt normal for that hour at a business that had already closed. I didn't wait around to find out if it meant anything. I started the engine, pulled back onto the road, and found somewhere else to spend the night. That's it, just a knock I didn't answer, a decision to keep going about my evening, and then a second read on the situation that told me it was actually time to leave. I say all that to say the systems aren't theoretical. I've actually needed them, and every time the same pattern played out. I noticed something that didn't sit right. I trusted it instead of talking myself out of it, and I acted on it before I had to find out whether my instinct was right. This would have worked exactly the same way in a hotel room or anywhere else I might have been staying that night. Looking back, I think the version of me who hadn't started this life yet would have assumed a moment like that meant I'd made a mistake by being out here alone at all. But it didn't mean that. It just meant the systems worked exactly the way they were supposed to. Here's the distinction I keep coming back to. There's a real difference between fear and wisdom, even though they can look similar from the outside. Fear says, don't do this at all. Stay small. Stay home. Don't take the risk. Wisdom says, do this, but pay attention. Have a plan. Trust your gut. Those are two very different responses to the exact same set of facts. If I let fear drive, I never would have started this in the first place. But if I ignored wisdom completely, I'd be reckless, and eventually something would catch up with me. The goal isn't zero risk. There's no such thing in a van, a hotel, or a house. The goal is being someone who takes reasonable precautions and then actually goes out and lives her life. And here's the thing I really want you to walk away with, because I think it's the part people in this next chapter need to hear the most. Being cautious isn't the same as being afraid, and getting started isn't the same as being fearless. Most brave things are done a little scared, And I've given myself permission to change plans if something doesn't sit right. No explanation needed. And that permission is part of what makes this sustainable. I won't pretend my safety systems are the whole story, though. I've had to actually trust God with the parts I can't control because no amount of planning removes every risk. Before almost every trip, I pray over it, not just plan it. And somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking of those two as separate things. Being prepared and trusting God aren't opposites. They actually work together. The checklist doesn't replace the prayer, and the prayer doesn't replace the checklist. There's a verse I come back to before I ever walk out the door. Then you will go on your way in safety, and your foot will not stumble. That's Proverbs 3:23. I think about how many times Scripture tells God's people not to be afraid, not because nothing bad could ever happen, but because they aren't facing it alone. That's the posture I try to hold on to wherever I am. I do my part, choosing wisely, staying aware, paying attention, and then I actually let go of the rest instead of white-knuckling it. That's not naive, it's just where my sense of safety ultimately comes from. Not a lock or an app, even though I use both, but the confidence that I'm not out here unseen. If you're in that next chapter, kids grown, ready to simplify, maybe even dreaming about travel you've been putting off in a van or otherwise, this channel is for you. If this was helpful, hit subscribe. I'll keep sharing the real, unfiltered parts of this life, not just the pretty ones. And if you've got a safety question I didn't cover here, van, hotel, flight, or otherwise, drop it in the comments. There's a link in the description if you want my full solo travel safety checklist, the exact one I just walked through, free when you join my email list. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you soon.